The discovery. The morning wind carried more than dust across Jeb's farm. It was the kind of dry, gritty breeze that made barn doors creak like old bones and left your throat scratching for water. Jeb had been wrestling with a busted irrigation rig for the better part of an hour when something caught his eye in the far field. At first, he thought it was just another tumbleweed caught in the wind's dance. But this movement was different, purposeful, desperate. He dropped his wrench and wiped the sweat from his weathered brow, squinting against the morning glare. The creature stumbled forward, collapsing every few steps like it couldn't decide whether to walk or surrender to the earth. Its hide shimmered strangely, catching sunlight in an almost metallic way that made Jeb's eyes water. When it finally crumpled just yards from his boots, Jeb approached slowly. What he found defied everything he thought he knew about the world. No bigger than a newborn calf, the creature had wings folded so tightly they looked broken, a tail curled like a bullwhip, and scales that flickered between blue and silver like captured starlight. Its breath came in shallow, barely audible huffs. Violet eyes cracked open briefly before closing again, too weak to maintain even that small effort. "Well now," Jeb muttered, half to himself and half to the dying creature, "ain't you a long way from home?" The dragon, because that's what it had to be, despite all logic, didn't flinch when Jeb reached into his jacket. He pulled out a half-eaten piece of jerky, holding it in his open palm. The creature hesitated, then slowly, shakily extended its neck to take the meat between delicate teeth. Jeb sat cross-legged in the dirt and pulled out his canteen. "Let's get you something to drink, little one." The dragon drank with its eyes closed, like it was finally safe. Like it had never been safe until that very moment. As Jeb watched this impossible creature trust him completely, he realized his quiet life was about to become anything but ordinary. The healing. The dragon barely moved for the first day, curled up in the shade of Jeb's grain silo like a broken ornament. Too weak to fly, too tired to run, it simply existed in that space between living and giving up. Jeb brought water every couple of hours, along with whatever meat scraps he could spare. The creature ate everything, even the turnips, though it seemed particularly fond of sweet corn, which Jeb found both strange and oddly endearing. On the second morning, the dragon attempted to stand. Its back legs buckled immediately, sending it face first into the water trough with an undignified splash. Jeb laughed so hard he nearly dropped his bucket. The dragon responded with an embarrassed hiss, then snorted out a tiny plume of fire, not really fire, more like a golden hiccup of light. "Well damn," Jeb chuckled, "guess that settles it. You're Spark now." The dragon tilted its head, violet eyes studying him intently, then blinked slowly as if accepting the name. From that moment on, Jeb talked to Spark like he would any farm animal. "Morning, Spark. Got some chicken scraps for you." Or, "I don't suppose you know how to fix a leaky valve, do you?" Spark watched him constantly, those intelligent eyes following Jeb's every movement as if memorizing the way he walked, the way he spoke. No growling, no snarling, just eating, sleeping, and watching with an intensity that suggested deep understanding. By the third night, Spark had begun following Jeb around the property, staying a respectful few feet behind with his tail dragging and wings still limp. When Jeb settled on the porch that evening, Spark curled up nearby, resting his chin on his front claws. As the stars emerged in the darkening sky, Jeb looked up and said softly, "Someone's missing you, aren't they?" Spark didn't respond, but he didn't look away from the stars either. Something in that cosmic gaze told Jeb that whoever was out there looking would notice their missing friend soon enough. And when they did, the sky would change forever. Learning to fly. The fourth morning brought Spark's first real attempt at flight. Jeb was checking the western irrigation line when a powerful gust of wind nearly knocked his hat clean off. He spun around, shotgun instinctively half-raised, only to see a silver-blue blur streak past the top of the grain silo. Spark wobbled badly, wings beating like broken sails, but managed to stay airborne for a full 5 seconds before tumbling into a haystack with a very undignified thump. "Trying to show off now, are we?" Jeb called out, lowering his weapon and shaking his head with amusement. The dragon emerged from the hay, spitting out straw and making a sound somewhere between a snort and a sneeze. Barker, Jeb's old farm dog, thought this was the best game ever invented and came sprinting over, barking with excitement. Spark flared his wings in surprise, tumbled backward, and rolled straight into Jeb's water barrels with a tremendous crash. "Now that's just wasteful," Jeb muttered, striding over to untangle the drenched mess of wings, scales, and wounded pride. Spark whined softly, blinking water from his eyes as Jeb helped him to his feet. "Easy now. You got legs like a newborn calf, but you're trying to fly like you think you're a hawk." Over the following days, Jeb noticed the changes. Spark's scales were healing, growing richer in color with deep purple edges. His wings were mending, and his muscles were filling out. The dragon was growing, fast. "You keep eating like you do," Jeb observed one evening, "you'll outgrow the barn by harvest time." Spark made a low, rumbling sound that almost resembled laughter. That night, Jeb cooked over the fire pit, smoked pork with charred carrots and sweet corn mash. Spark sat nearby, content and peaceful, but Jeb couldn't shake the feeling that their time together was running short. Something was coming. He could feel it in the way Spark sometimes stared at the sky, in the subtle changes in the wind patterns, in the strange dreams that had begun visiting him each night. Their peaceful days were numbered, and whatever was approaching would test the bond they'd built in ways neither of them could imagine. The visitors. The sky changed on a Tuesday. Jeb woke to find Spark pacing restlessly by the barn, wings spread wide and head tilted toward the heavens. The dragon's scales had darkened to deep indigo, and his eyes blazed with an inner fire Jeb had never seen before. "What is it, boy?" Jeb asked, but Spark only whimpered and pressed closer to his side. The answer came at sunset. 3 lights appeared on the horizon, moving in perfect formation across the darkening sky. They weren't planes, they moved too smoothly, too purposefully. As they drew closer, their ships became visible, sleek vessels that seemed to bend light around them like heat mirages. They landed in Jeb's largest field without so much as disturbing the wheat. The beings that emerged were tall, graceful, with skin that shimmered like Spark's scales and eyes that held the depth of centuries. Their leader approached slowly, hands empty and visible, a gesture of peace that transcended species. "We have come for the young one," the alien said, its voice like wind chimes in Jeb's mind rather than his ears. Spark trembled beside him, torn between excitement and fear. These were his people, but Jeb was his family. "He's been hurt," Jeb said simply. "I've been taking care of him." The alien nodded, a gesture surprisingly human. "We know. We felt his pain across the void, felt at ease when he found you. You have given him something precious, kindness when he expected only death." More aliens gathered around them, their expressions unreadable but not unkind. One of them knelt and extended a hand toward Spark, speaking in musical tones that made the dragon's eyes brighten with recognition. "His name among us translates to Star-Touched," the leader explained. "He was on his first flight beyond our world when solar storms damaged his vessel. We have searched for many cycles." Jeb felt his heart sink. Of course they had to take Spark home. The dragon belonged with his own kind, not on a failing farm in the middle of nowhere. But as the aliens prepared to leave, Spark did something unexpected. He looked between Jeb and his rescuers, then spread his wings and released a long, mournful cry that echoed across the fields. The alien leader paused, studying both dragon and farmer with those ancient eyes. "Interesting," the being murmured. "The young one wishes to choose. The choice." The alien leader turned to Jeb with something that might have been a smile. "In our culture, when a young one bonds with another species so completely, we honor that connection. Star-Touched may choose his path." Spark looked between them, his violet eyes bright with intelligence and emotion. Then he did something that surprised everyone. He walked to Jeb and gently took the farmer's weathered hand in his claws, then moved to the alien leader and touched his shimmering robes with his wing. "He chooses both," the alien said with wonder. "How remarkable." The leader stepped forward and placed a device in Jeb's palm, a smooth crystal that pulsed with warm light. This will allow you to communicate across the stars. Star-touched wishes to learn from both worlds. He will spend seasons with us, learning the ways of his people, but he will always return to you. Jeb's throat tightened. What about his real family? You are his real family, the alien replied gently. Blood does not make family, choice does. Love does. You chose to save him when you could have walked away. That bond transcends species. As the ships prepared to depart, Spark pressed his head against Jeb's shoulder one last time. The dragon had grown so much, his scales now deep purple-black, his wings strong and proud. But his eyes still held that same trust they'd shown on that first desperate morning. Take care of yourself out there, Jeb whispered. And don't forget to come home. Spark made that low rumbling sound again, the one that sounded like laughter, and touched the crystal in Jeb's hand with his snout. It flared bright blue, and suddenly Jeb could hear the dragon's thoughts as clearly as words. Home is wherever you are, old friend. I'll be back before the next harvest. The ships rose silently into the night sky, carrying Spark toward adventures among the stars. But Jeb wasn't sad as he watched them disappear. The crystal pulsed warm against his palm, already carrying whispers of distant worlds and a young dragon's excitement at exploring them. 6 months later, on a morning much like the one when he'd first found Spark, Jeb looked up from his irrigation work to see a familiar silver-blue shape diving playfully through the clouds. Spark had grown magnificent, twice his previous size, with scales that shifted like northern lights and a roar that could shake the barn doors. But when he landed and saw Jeb waiting with a bucket of sweet corn, the mighty star dragon still made that same pleased chirping sound and pressed his great head against the farmer's shoulder like the lost hatchling he'd once been. Some bonds, Jeb reflected as he scratched behind Spark's horned ears, truly were written in the stars. The end.